If you've spent time in a large American city, you may have come across chick tracts in your travels. These pocket-sized cartoons are known for their frank and uncompromising attitudes towards religion, ascertaining that only their brand of Christianity can save one from eternal damnation. For over half a century, chick tracts have warned readers about the dangers of Catholicism, Halloween, Dungeons & Dragons, Harry Potter, and basically anything which contradicts their fundamentalist Christian worldview. But even though some have deemed them so offensive that they've been labeled as hate literature, there remains a dedicated following for chick tracts amongst Christians and atheists alike. So, how exactly did chick tracts come to be? And why do they remain so popular 60 years after their debut? To find out, we're going to have to meet the man behind these legendary comics and see just where his influences lie. Jack Thomas Chick was born in California on April 13, 1924. Chick.com recounts Jack's childhood as stable, but notes his parents weren't overly affectionate. His father spoke only of business, whereas his mother gave most of her attention to their daughter Doris. Being a sickly child, Jack turned his attentions to doodling in his spare time, and sometimes even in school, where he was known as a less than exemplary student. He was hardly a religious teenager, and it's often repeated that Jack made his Christian peers uncomfortable with his foul mouth. Jack aspired to become an actor, but as World War II was raging, he first had to serve in the military. This didn't deter him though, and after completing his service, he joined a school for theater. It was here that he met Lynn Priddle, his future wife. Since Lynn came from a family of faith, Jack tried impressing her parents by listening to a religious radio program while honeymooning at their home in Canada. Hearing the words of the Baptist preacher Charles Fuller made an instant convert out of Jack, and he consistently credited this experience with saving his soul. Settling into married life, Jack now needed a more stable income than his dreams might allow. Furthermore, his newfound faith made him distrusting of Hollywood. He was at least able to put his drawing skills to work in the advertising industry, where he did technical illustrations for an aerospace firm. In 1953, he partnered with writer W.S. Clayton to create a caveman-themed series called Times Have Changed, which ran for 2 years. But Jack found he was still lacking passion in his career, so he began looking for ways he could use his talents in service of his faith. The story goes that Jack was planning on moving into missionary work overseas. He gave up after hearing that his wife's aunt, a missionary herself, had a colleague whose leg was bit off by an alligator in Africa. Jack sought counsel from a preacher who told him how the Chinese communists drew American-style comics to proliferate Maoist ideas. Jack instantly had an epiphany. Though he had always had a flair for the dramatic, he had grown fearful of public speaking, limiting his options on how to spread his idea of true Christianity. Writing and illustrating comics gave him the perfect outlet to express his faith while keeping a low profile. And so, Jack now spent his evenings after work putting together his first sketches, coupling them with lessons from the Bible. Jack had difficulty securing a publisher to distribute his early works. To get around this, he elected to self-publish. The first tract, Why No Revival, reflected Jack's growing disapproval of hypocrisy in modern religion. Though he found success in disseminating his comic to local churches, Jack was met with an icy reception at his own parish. He often speculated that this is because he caricaturized many of his fellow churchgoers in the artwork. As the first tract found its way into local bookstores, Jack took heat from religious groups like the Lutherans, who found it woefully out of touch. He said some Christian bookstores even accused him of blasphemy. Though discouraged, Jack went about writing his second story. He was inspired after seeing a group of teenagers he feared were on the path to hell, so Jack began writing an anti-rebellion story called A Demon's Nightmare. Because of Jack's growing reputation, few were willing to take on the risk of giving the newer tract shelf space. With costs piling up, Jack took a gamble by presenting his work to his devout Christian boss, who instantly saw the potential and agreed to finance publication. From here, Jack says the good Lord inspired him with more stories to render into comic form. He'd draw through his lunch breaks and work well into the evening to finish up his next publication. While at work one morning, Jack's car somehow caught on fire in the parking lot. Jack helplessly watched as the fire department battled the blaze, knowing his scripts and illustrations were locked in the trunk. Apparently, his boss attributed the fire to some kind of spiritual warfare being waged against the cartoonist. Amazingly, though, it seems his pages were somehow spared the worst of it. Jack was able to finish up the script and publish the book shortly after. Jack authored his most famous tract of all, called This Was Your Life, in 1962. The comic's content came from a presentation he gave to a group of inmates, using his characteristic artwork to help clarify his message. Chick.com states that the presentation went over so well that Jack made converts out of most of the group, prompting Jack to render it into the tract he'd become best known for. The story would set the standard for many tropes employed by Jack, namely a morality tale involving despair which only repentance before God could prevent. By 1970, Chick Tracts had grown so popular that Jack needed to officially incorporate his business. Thus, Chick Publications was born. Within 4 years, he was producing full-size comics alongside the classic pocket-sized tracts. Jack hired another illustrator, named Fred Carter, to meet the growing demand of their readership. Together, they began working on a series called The Crusaders, the popularity of which led to Jack seeking out more like-minded believers to help build his growing body of work. One of these was a controversial religious icon from the era named Alberto Rivera, who claimed to be an ex-Jesuit on the run from the Catholic Church for threatening to expose them. Alberto argued that his time with the Catholic Church in Spain showed him the darker side of the Church. The accusations he hurled included the Catholic Church's responsibility for the Lincoln assassination. Alberto also credited the Jesuits with creating the Islamic religion, another belief system he frequently railed against. Apparently, he was involved in a conspiracy by the Catholic Church to destroy Protestantism around the world through a new Inquisition. This is not verifiable, nor is there concrete proof that Alberto Rivera was ever in fact involved with the Jesuit order. As was often the case with Jack's comics, he credited talking to God with why he took the Alberto story so seriously. Jack believed that the Lord wanted him to create a limited-run comic book named after his new cohort, which recounted many of Alberto's most sensational stories, like the existence of a Vatican hit list. Alberto maintained that his falling out with the Catholic Church subjected him to much persecution. Therefore, he was now a hunted man. But the popularity of the Alberto comic series didn't go unnoticed by Catholic groups, who of course didn't take too kindly to these conspiracies. Some Catholic bookstores removed the series and other Chick publications from their shelves, and Jack was even booted out of the Christian Booksellers Association for his refusal to disavow Alberto. But instead, Jack went even more on the offensive. The cartoonist now believed Catholic propaganda was being pushed to smear the names of he and his newest ally. But they remained steadfast in having their version of the truth communicated through comics which continued to blast Catholicism. In 1981, the Christian magazine Cornerstone did an investigation into Alberto's past, finding several holes in his story. The magazine reported that Alberto Rivera had a lengthy history of fraud involving religious organizations in California, along with charges of scamming people with bad checks. He supposedly lied about being a Catholic priest to collect donation money for a Spanish church in the 1960s, which of course never saw a dime of it. Alberto apparently changed his story of converting away from the faith multiple times, saying it happened both in 1952 and in 1967. Because his claims of being both a Catholic priest and a bishop were refuted by the church itself, Alberto framed this as yet another conspiracy to silence him. As for his impressive resume, Alberto's education appeared to come from multiple diploma mills. Most damning of all, however, is the fact that he sired multiple children during the time he claimed to be in the Jesuit order. Of course, Catholic priests are not permitted to marry or have offspring. Cornerstone magazine admitted that it was difficult to get Jack's side of the story, as by 1975 he was giving fewer interviews. It seemed he had grown paranoid that his association with Alberto Rivera put him at risk, though he remained a firm ally. Around the same time, Jack Chick became an adherent of the King James Only movement, which considered the 1611 translation of the Holy Bible to be the definitive version. This only further fueled Jack's antagonizing of the Catholic Church. Alberto Rivera wasn't the only conspiracy theorist to join Jack's inner circle. There was a doctor named Ruth Irene Bailey, later known as Rebecca Brown, who was obsessed with demons. Rebecca was adamant that the hospital she worked at had been infiltrated by witches who had declared spiritual warfare on her. She also thought rosaries were talismans used for witchcraft, and made odious claims like rock and roll being the devil's music. Rebecca compiled her beliefs into 2 books, both distributed by Chick Publications, which helped perpetuate the satanic panic of the 1980s. She lost her medical license in 1984 over her inclination to diagnose her patients with demonic possession. But even professional disgrace didn't deter Rebecca from fringe thinking. Though Rebecca cut ties with Chick publications towards the end of the decade, her anti-Catholic rhetoric had already shaped the content of future Chick tracts. Another of Jack's dubious associates was noted conspiracy theorist John Todd, who had met Jack years earlier while presenting himself as a former practitioner of witchcraft. Jack used this backstory to promote the need for turning to the Lord to be saved. John Todd's outrageous claims about the occult's association with Dungeons & Dragons formed the basis of the popular Chick tract Dark Dungeons, which inspired a satirical film of the same name decades later. As the truth of John Todd's past came to light, it was clear he had invented most of the story for dramatic effect. Even worse, John Todd had been guilty of his share of horrific crimes. Jack nevertheless defended him and kept him around until John's conviction in 1988. The continued badgering of the Catholic Church by Chick publications made them quite cross, and more religious leaders unsurprisingly turned on the cartoonist. Rumor has it that in Canada, the tracts found popularity amongst nationalist groups who found them useful as propaganda. This led to the Attorney General of Ontario launching an investigation in 1981 over whether the comics ought to be banned. Sanctions seemingly went through 2 years later, and the ordeal was prominently featured in the first edition of Jack's newsletter Battle Cry from 1983. In 1984, Jack released one of his most contentious tracts, simply titled Lisa. It involved the horrific abuse of a small child at the hands of her parents, who, after converting to Christianity, apologized to her and go on with their lives without any further repercussions. This trivialization of such sensitive issues caused one of the biggest backlashes against Chick publications to date, leading to a rare retraction and cessation of further issues of the comic in question. The affair led to a decline in American readership of Chick tracts, though they still maintained a sizable fellowship worldwide. Jack courted professional translations of his work in over 100 languages, which only made them more ubiquitous. By 1989, Chick tracts had found popularity amongst missionaries abroad for their simple and direct messaging. Despite this, the 1990s proved a difficult decade for Chick publications. Jack was rumored to have suffered a stroke in 1996, which seems to be corroborated by a perceived decline in his penmanship around this point. Fans of Chick tracts point out that he was able to rebound to his previous artistic quality after much practice. Jack's old pal Alberto Rivera succumbed to colon cancer in 1997, though Jack was convinced Alberto had been assassinated with poison. He vowed to continue their mission to expose the Roman Catholic Church, no matter what the personal risk. Further hardship for Jack came in 1998 when his wife Lynn died. The decade also provided new opportunities for Jack on the World Wide Web, however, with the official Chick tract website having launched in 1995. The comics quickly caught the attention of early internet users as an unintentional source of comedy, often because of their melodramatic presentation and distinct art styles. A man named Psycho Dave, owner of the classic website WeirdCrap.com, had created the unofficial Jack Chick archive where his audience could view some of his personal favorites. Later, this was expanded to include unofficial parodies. Within a few months, Chick publications discovered the website had been republishing the tracts and opened a dialogue through email asking them to remove the offending images. But Weird Crap's webmasters didn't take this too seriously, arguing that the usage constituted fair use for purposes of parody. Jack's legal team disagreed, reiterating their demands under threat of legal action. This only emboldened Psycho Dave to pen a facetious response. He pointed out that the comics were both freely available on the Chick website, and that in most cases he simply linked to an external affiliate hosting the images, absolving him of legal responsibility. Psycho Dave also made it clear that his website linked to the official Chick Publications domain to encourage users to buy comics from the source, out of comedic irony. Most importantly though, Psycho Dave pointed out that he made no commercial profit off of Jack's work. The following passage summed up what Dave felt about the threats from Chick's cohorts. Quote, "I'm terribly sorry if Chick Publications is pissed off that I have the nerve to poke fun of ideas and beliefs that they hold holy and sacred. But this is America. We have freedom of speech, freedom of jokes, freedom of parody, and you have to learn to have a sense of humor about yourself. If Chick Publications can't laugh at itself, then it has a serious problem." Of course, Psycho Dave's response wasn't taken with good humor. Psycho Dave remained 2 steps ahead, though, informing Chick Publications that while he would comply with taking down the images from his own servers, He had friends in Finland that would host them on a local domain free of America's copyright laws. Psycho Dave couldn't expect what the Chick team would pull next, though, calling him at his workplace. He had stored some of the images provisionally on his work's web server, which also had his name and employer listed. It seems that the treasurer of Chick Publications, Ron Rockney, cross-referenced this information to obtain the phone number. The following is Psycho Dave's account of the conversation. Quote, he said, "Dave, I'm sure you'd agree with me that your employer wouldn't be too happy if they found out you were using one of their computers to illegally store 154 copyrighted images. Now what was I thinking here? I was thinking, gee, what a bastard! He's blackmailing me." Ron insisted the pictures be removed as soon as possible. Psycho Dave's hand had seemingly been forced. Though he complied, this was only after handing off the comics to a buddy to host elsewhere. As it turns out, Ron had made similar threats to other webmasters who lampooned Chick Publications. Psycho Dave got in touch with a few who noted that responses to Ron would often go unanswered. Eventually, the matter appeared to be dropped by Chick Publications, and Psycho Dave continued producing new parodies for Weird Crap's dedicated section to their favorite Christian cartoonist. The new millennium saw Jack's declining health hindering the development of new comics. But he wasn't out of the game completely. In 2003, his co-illustrator Fred Carter served as the art director for a Chick-financed film called Light of the World. This movie was a collection of Bible verses told through oil paintings, apparently influenced by the work of Ken Burns. Jimmy Akin from Catholic Answers magazine managed to get a rare impromptu interview with the cartoonist at one of the premieres, even asking to tour the Chick Publications studios. Jack politely refused, however, fearing that Islamic agents working with the Catholics might make an attempt on his life. They left on friendly terms, though. Jimmy Akin later said of Jack, quote, "From meeting him, one would never suspect him to be the most infamous broadcaster of hate and paranoia in the Christian comic book world." Sometime over the next 2 years, it seems Jack suffered a heart attack after going into diabetic shock. This wasn't the only tragic moment that year, though, as his only daughter had died from complications following surgery as well. In 2006, Chick Publications began re-releasing some of its tracts with revised artwork, under the banner of, quote, "tailored for black audiences." Battlecry Newsletter claimed this was done after a black pastor suggested the comics may resonate with his churchgoers better if they saw characters that looked like them. So Fred Carter went to work updating some of the most popular stories. Though Jack's message remained unflinching, as he got on in years, he started offering commentary on more modern fixtures of pop culture as well, like the Harry Potter books which he equated to the occult. On October 23, 2016, Jack Chick died at the age of 92. He had been working right up until his death, and he was succeeded by longtime collaborator David W. Daniels. Apparently, Jack stowed away at least 2 years of material to keep his authorship going even after he passed. The website states that at the time of his death, hundreds of millions of tracts had been sold, which if true would make Jack one of the most prolific authors in the world. Chick Publications continues to sell many of the original Chick tracts, and new stories are authored by David Daniels and Fred Carter. More recently, David has been active on the Chick Publications YouTube channel with vlogs about the life and legacy of Jack Chick, even sharing some rare video footage of the creator. Online collectors still view Chick tracts as inexpensive but rewarding collectibles, often out of irony or because the messages truly resonate with them. Jack Chick is that rare instance of a religious figure who didn't live an ostentatious life, like Peter Popoff or Sylvia Browne. In fact, he was notoriously shy, especially in his later years, though most attribute this to his wary attitude towards the Catholic Church. Jack's friends often speak of his modest lifestyle and warmth towards people of any type, despite the prejudice expressed in his tracts. The story of Jack Chick is difficult to parse due to his hermetic lifestyle, evident paranoia, and the many unreliable narrators that he seemed to court through the years. But with his publishing empire still going strong, and with new audiences still finding humor in his comic strips, it seems unlikely that he'll fully fade into obscurity anytime soon.